The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grit stick harder. It was a relentless, hammering gray sheet that turned the asphalt of the loading dock into a slick black mirror, fracturing the red neon reflection of the Mercy Hospital sign above into 1,000 bleeding shards. The air smelled of wet concrete, diesel fumes, and the metallic tang of ozone that always seemed to hover over the industrial district. I sat in the cab of my truck, the engine idling just enough to keep the heater blowing a thin stream of warmth against my steel-toed boots. My hands were wrapped around a thermos of bitter coffee, the steam fogging the windshield. I had just finished a 10-hour shift rigging a 3-ton HVAC unit onto the roof of the hospital's new wing. It had been a blind pick. The crane operator couldn't see the load, relying entirely on my voice over the radio to guide tons of steel through a gap barely wider than the unit itself. My shoulders ached with that specific, deep burn that lived in the joints, a reminder of every pound of tension I'd managed that day. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., hung my work gloves on the dash, and prepared to drive home. I usually ate standing at my kitchen counter and left the bedroom light off before the hallway clock hit 9 because silence was easier to carry than noise. Then came the knock. It wasn't a polite tap. It was a frantic, desperate hammering on the passenger side glass, sharp enough to make me drop the thermos cap. I frowned, wiping crumbs from my beard, and leaned over the center console to crank the window down. A woman stood there. That was the first thing that registered, just a silhouette against the driving rain. Then the details sharpened as she leaned into the cab's light. She was soaking wet. An expensive beige trench coat ruined by the oil and grime of the alley. Her blonde hair plastered to her skull in dark, heavy strands. Water dripped from her nose and chin, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes, they were terrifyingly blue, laser-focused, and wide with a kind of panic I usually only saw when a cable snapped under load. I recognized her. Logan King. She owned the architecture firm on the top floor of the building I'd just serviced. I'd seen her in the elevator once a few months ago, holding a set of blueprints like a royal decree, looking like she owned the air she breathed. She was the kind of woman who walked through glass doors without breaking stride because she assumed they would open for her. Now, she looked like she was drowning. "You," she said, her breath hitching in the cold air. She pointed a manicured, trembling finger at the logo stitched onto my chest pocket. Collins Heavy Lift and Rigging. "You lift things. Heavy things. I saw you with the crane this morning. You moved that unit without it touching the walls." "I do," I said, my voice scraping against the silence of the cab. I didn't move to unlock the door. I just watched her, assessing the threat level. She wasn't dangerous, but she was volatile. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "My husband is out of town," she said. The words came out in a rush, rehearsed but crumbling at the edges. "He's at a conference in Zurich. I need to move some furniture. Right now." Rain sheeted off the rim of her coat. Her hands were clutching a wet leather clutch so hard her knuckles were white. Her thumb worried the edge of a thick envelope until the paper tore. Every time headlights passed the alley entrance, she flinched toward the truck like she was tracking an ambush. "Ma'am, it's raining," I said slowly, as if speaking to someone in shock. "And I'm off the clock. You need a moving company. I can give you a number for a crew that handles residential." "I called them," she snapped, her voice cracking. "I called 3 of them. They canceled. All of them. He made them cancel. He flagged the credit cards. He knows." She stopped, taking a jagged breath that rattled in her chest. She shoved her phone across the console, displaying a screenshot of a legal document time-stamped, signed, and notarized. "My lawyer warned me at 2:07 p.m., Clause 14.2. If I am not vacated from the primary residence by 11:59 p.m. on the date of separation filing, I forfeit the contents." He filed this morning while I was in a meeting. He locked the freight elevator remotely. I have to use the stairs. I picked up the phone. The legal jargon was dense, but the timestamp was clear. 11:59 p.m. Today. I looked up at the building looming above us. The King penthouse was on the 20th floor. I knew the layout. The stairwell was narrow, concrete, and endless. "You want to move a piano down 20 flights of stairs?" I asked, my voice flat. "I want to save my life," she whispered. The fight drained out of her face, leaving something raw and terrified in its wake. "Those things, they aren't his. They're mine. My grandmother's piano. My father's drafting desk. If I leave them, he'll burn them. I know he will. He won't sell them. He'll destroy them, just to prove he can. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the thick envelope she'd been mauling. I have cash. I withdrew it before the accounts froze. I'll pay you double your rate. Triple. Whatever it takes. Please. Just help me. I looked at her eyes. I didn't see a CEO anymore. I saw a person cornered by fine print and a man who played dirty. I knew about leverage. I knew about tension and breaking points. And I knew when a load was too heavy for one person to carry. I unlocked the door. The sound was loud in the quiet cab. Get in, I said. You're going to freeze out there. The drive around the block to the loading bay of the residential tower was silent. Logan sat in the passenger seat, shivering violently. I cranked the heat up to the max, but the cold seemed to be coming from inside her. She held her hands in front of the vents, rubbing them together, staring straight ahead. My cousin Marco handles the books, I said, breaking the silence just to give her something to focus on. If he knew I was taking a side job for cash without a contract, he'd have an aneurysm. I'll need you to sign a liability waiver when we get upstairs. I can sign a contract, she said through chattering teeth. I can sign anything you want. No time for full paperwork, I said, turning the wheel. The massive tires of my truck splashed through a deep puddle, sending a spray of dirty water against the loading dock wall. We're on the clock. You said midnight? 11:59, she corrected. He has cameras inside the unit. He checks the timestamps. Friendly guy. He's a litigator, she said, as if that explained everything. He wins. That's what he does. He doesn't settle. I pulled up next to the sad-looking U-Haul she had parked haphazardly near the dumpster. It was too small for a piano. But we'd make it work. I parked my rig behind it, blocking the alley so no one could come in. I killed the engine. Let's go, I said. We entered the lobby. The night doorman, a guy named Gary who I'd bribed with coffee a few times during the hospital job, looked up from his desk. His eyes widened when he saw Logan wet, disheveled, with a giant mechanic trailing behind her. Miss King? Gary stood up, nervous. Mr. King called. He said no movers. He said, if I let anyone up, I lose my job. Logan walked up to the desk. She didn't look like a victim now. She drew herself up, channeling every ounce of CEO authority she had left. Gary, she said, her voice steady. This is not a mover. This is a technical consultant regarding structural load bearing, and if you try to stop me from entering my own home before midnight, I will sue this building for unlawful restriction of access so fast your head will spin. Gary swallowed. He looked at me. I gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Let her pass. I didn't see anything, Gary muttered, sitting back down and burying his face in his logbook. Elevators are locked out, though. Like he asked, I can't override the system without the master code, and he changed it. We know, I said. We took the stairs, 20 flights. I set a pace that was steady but relentless, my boots ringing on the concrete. The stairwell was cold, lit by buzzing fluorescent strips. Logan kept up, though I could hear her breathing raggedly by the 10th floor. She kicked off her heels somewhere around the 12th floor and carried them, climbing in her stocking feet. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for a break. She just kept climbing. When we reached the penthouse door, she fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so bad she dropped them. I caught them before they hit the floor. Breathe, I said gently. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The penthouse smelled of expensive lilies and stale tension. It was a beautiful space, glass and steel and cold, hard surfaces. Boxes were stacked haphazardly near the door, taped shut with frantic haste. But in the center of the living room, anchoring the space like a black hole, stood the piano. It was a Steinway Model B, 7 feet of polished ebony and cast iron. It weighed 700 pounds. Easy. Next to it was a solid oak drafting desk, scarred with age and heavy as a tombstone. That's it, Logan said, leaning against the doorframe, trying to catch her breath. She had shed the wet coat, revealing a silk blouse that was damp at the shoulders and ruined mud-spattered trousers. Just those two? Everything else is gone. I packed the clothes and the books yesterday. I couldn't move them. I walked over to the piano. I ran my hand along the curve of the wood. It was cold to the touch. Can we slide it? She asked hopefully. Not downstairs, I said, and not without destroying it. I walked to the window. It was a massive, floor-to-ceiling glass panel that opened onto a terrace overlooking the city. Rain lashed against the glass, blurring the lights of Seattle into streaks of gold and red. I opened the sliding door and stepped out. The wind hit me instantly, cold and wet. I looked down. The alleyway was a straight shot. My truck was parked right below, the bed measuring exactly the drop zone I needed. I stepped back inside, wiping rain from my beard. "We don't use the stairs," I said. "What?" "We rig it," I said. I turned to her, my mind already calculating load angles and shear strength. "I have a portable aluminum gantry and a high-torque electric winch in my truck. We lower it from the terrace." Her eyes went wide. "From the balcony? Is that legal?" "I need to see the authorization first," I said. She tapped her phone screen and forwarded an email to me. "My lawyer filed an emergency asset preservation order at 4:59 p.m., she said. "It authorizes retrieval by any necessary means to prevent destruction of property." I checked the attachment on my own phone. It was legit. "Emergency retrieval under Property Council instruction," I said, nodding. "Alley secured. Spotter at ground level Gary owes me." "Is locking your wife out of her house legal?" She let out a short, sharp breath. No, it's not." "Then we're even." I didn't wait for permission. I went into work mode. This was my domain. The chaos of emotions, the divorce, the lawyers, that was her mess. But moving heavy objects through space without breaking them? That was mine. "I need blankets," I said, my voice dropping into the command tone I used on job sites. "And duct tape. All of it. Towels, pillows, anything soft." "I have packing quilts," she said, springing into action. For the next 45 minutes, we worked. I went down to the truck and hauled up the gear heavy grade. 8 zero chains, nylon lifting slings, the collapsible aluminum gantry frame that broke down into manageable sections. I sweated through my shirt carrying the counterweights up 20 flights, but I didn't slow down. Logan wasn't useless. She didn't stand around wringing her hands. When I asked for tape, she had it torn and ready. When I needed the leg of the piano unscrewed, she was under there with the screwdriver before I could even kneel down. "He said I couldn't do it," she muttered, grunting as she loosened a stubborn screw on the pedal lyre. "He said I'd leave it all behind because I'm too weak to carry it. He said I was decorative." I watched her wrestle with the heavy brass screw. She wasn't decorative. She was titanium wrapped in silk. "Leverage doesn't care about weak," I said, handing her a specialized hex key from my belt. "Physics is fair. You just need the right angle." She looked at me, surprised. She took the key. With the added leverage, the screw turned. I set up the gantry on the terrace. It was a tripod system, anchored to the structural columns of the balcony. I double-checked the load ratings. The wind was gusting, but the rig was solid. By 10:30 p.m., the piano was wrapped like a mummy in quilts and tape. I slid the lifting straps underneath, checking the center of gravity. This was the critical part. If it tipped, it would swing into the building and shatter the glass. "I need you to guide the tail," I told her. I handed her a pair of heavy leather work gloves. They swallowed her slender hands. "Put these on," I said. "Nylon burns." She looked at the gloves, then up at me. Her eyes were swimming with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you. For not asking why. For not telling me I'm crazy." "I don't need to know why," I said. I checked the shackle one last time, tightening the pin. "I just need to know you're clear. Once this goes over the rail, there's no pulling it back." "I'm clear," she said. Her voice was steel. I hit the button on the winch remote. The cable went taut with a metallic ping. The piano lifted an inch off the floor. It hovered, heavy and silent, a dark beast floating in the room. "Open the doors," I said. Lowering a grand piano 20 stories in a Seattle storm is not standard operating procedure. It's madness. But it was controlled madness. I stood on the terrace, rain lashing my face, soaking my shirt, operating the remote. The motor whined, a high-pitched drone against the wind. Logan stood by the railing, tethered to a safety line I'd rigged for her. She was watching her past descend into the dark alley below. She was soaked again, shivering violently, but she didn't move. She watched that piano like it was a hostage being released. "Steady," I murmured to myself, feathering the controls. The wind caught the load, spinning it slightly. "Easy now." I adjusted the tagline, using my weight to counter the swing. My boot slipped on the wet tile, but I dug in. I wasn't going to lose this. Not for her. The piano descended past the 19th floor. The 18th. I counted the floors as it passed them, ticking off the seconds. When it touched the bed of my truck with a soft, heavy thump that vibrated up the cable, she let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She slumped against the railing, her knees giving out. I caught her arm, steadying her. One down, I said. Desk next. The desk was easier. It was just heavy, not delicate. We tilted it through the door frame, sweating and grunting. We synced our breathing, counting down together. 1, 2, pivot, moving in the unspoken language of shared labor. By 10:45 p.m., the truck was loaded. The apartment was bare. Is that everything? I asked, coiling the cables. She looked around the empty living room. The rain beat against the glass. Her eyes landed on a small framed photo on the mantel that we had missed. She walked over and picked it up. She looked at it for a long second, a picture of a smiling couple on a sailboat. She placed it face down on the empty floor. That's everything, she said. Let's go. We took the stairs down. My knees protested the descent, burning with fatigue, but I kept my pace steady, right behind her. If she slipped, I would catch her. That was the job. We reached the lobby at 11 p.m. Gary looked at us, relief washing over his face. He called again. Gary whispered. He's seeing the activity on the terrace security cams. He's sending the police. He says you're looting. He's shouting about pressing charges. Logan went pale. He can't. It's my property. I stepped forward. Gary. Log the exit time. 11:02 p.m. Contents removed by owner prior to deadline. If the police come, show them the log and the preservation order number I gave you. It's a civil matter, not criminal looting. He has the deed, Gary said. But, okay, I'll log it. You guys need to go, Gary hissed. Now. I pushed the door open. The cold air hit us like a physical blow. Get in the truck, I said. But my U-Haul? Leave it, I said. It's empty anyway. We need to secure the load. I'll drive you. She hesitated only a second. She ran to my truck. I climbed into the driver's side, the engine roaring to life. As we pulled out of the alley, a cruiser turned the corner, lights flashing, cutting through the rain. I didn't speed. Speed draws attention. I drove with the deliberate calm of a man hauling 3 tons of unsecured mahogany. I turned right, then left, weaving through the industrial district, disappearing into the grid of the city. We didn't go to a storage unit. She didn't have one. I leased a loft, she said quietly. In Sado. It's an old warehouse. Raw space. No furniture. Just mine. It's in my maiden name. She gave me the address. It was deep in the industrial district. A place of brick and iron and grit. We drove in silence. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a thick, heavy quiet in the cab. I could hear her sipping the coffee. I could hear the wet tires on the pavement. When we got to the building, it was 11:30 p.m. It was a converted factory, the loading dock illuminated by a single flickering yellow light. I backed the truck in. The freight elevator here worked. It was an old scissor gate style, smelling of grease and history. I moved the desk first, then the piano. I rolled it off the truck, onto the dolly, and into the elevator. The loft was huge, cold, and empty. Exposed brick walls, concrete floors, high ceilings with metal trusses. It was beautiful in a stark, lonely way. I rolled the piano into the center of the room. I unwrapped the quilts. The black finish gleamed under the industrial lights. 11:55, I said, checking my watch. You made it. Logan stood in the middle of the room. She looked at the piano. She ran her hand over the keys. She didn't play. She just touched them, as if verifying they were real. I bought this with my first bonus, she said softly. 10 years ago. He hated it. Said it took up too much space. He made me cover it with a sheet when we had parties. She turned to me. Her hair was drying in messy waves. Her mascara was smeared under her eyes. You saved me, she said. I moved some wood, I said, shifting my weight, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. No, she stepped closer. You didn't ask me if I was crazy? You didn't ask me if I had permission? You just helped. You saw a problem, and you fixed it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Her hands were still shaking, but less now. How much? She asked. I said double. Name your price. I looked at the checkbook. I looked at her. I thought about my rent, which was late. I thought about the empty fridge at my place. I thought about the risk I'd just taken, driving a client's assets away from police lights. Standard rate for a night call, I said. 200 an hour? 4 hours? 800. Don't be stupid, she said. That was worth 5,000. 10. 800, I repeated. I don't take charity, and I don't take advantage. She stared at me. She looked confused, as if she'd forgotten that men could be anything other than transactional. Slowly, she lowered the pen. She ripped out a check, wrote on it, and handed it to me. $800. You're a strange man, Kaizen Collins, she said. I'm a simple man, I corrected. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. I gathered my straps and chains. I turned to leave. Wait, she said. I stopped. I have no food, she said. She gestured to the empty expanse of the loft. And no chairs. And I don't want to be alone right now. It's too quiet. The silence is loud. She looked at me, biting her lip. I ordered pizza. It should be here in 10 minutes. Will you stay? Just to eat? I promise I won't ask you to move anything else. I looked at the door. I looked at her. She wasn't asking for a mover anymore. She was asking for a witness. Someone to acknowledge that she existed in this new, empty space. Someone to act as a buffer against the sudden vacuum of her life. I eat a lot, I warned. I ordered 2 extra larges, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. We sat on the floor, the pizza box between us on the polished concrete. The rain lashed against the tall industrial windows, blurring the city lights. But inside, it was dry. We didn't talk about the husband. We didn't talk about the divorce. She didn't want to explain, and I didn't want to hear the ugly details of a life that had nothing to do with me. We talked about rigging. She asked me how the gantry worked. She asked about fulcrums and tension loads. I drew a diagram on the inside of the pizza box lid with a Sharpie, explaining how a snatch block works to double the lifting force. It's all about balance, I said, tapping the cardboard. If you find the center of gravity, you can move anything. It doesn't matter how heavy it is. You just have to know where the weight lives. Center of gravity, she repeated softly. She looked at the diagram, tracing the lines I'd drawn. I think I lost mine a long time ago. You found it tonight, I said. You moved the piano. You moved the piano, she corrected. I just provided the force, I said. You provided the direction. You made the call. She fell silent. She picked at a pepperoni, staring at the window. My husband. He's not out of town, she said. The truth hung in the air, heavy as the oak desk. He's at a conference, yes. But he told me if I wasn't gone when he got back on Friday, he'd change the locks and file for abandonment. He wanted me to leave with nothing. He wanted me to walk out with a suitcase so he could keep the narrative. She left me. She abandoned our home. She looked at me. You ruined his narrative. Good, I said. She shivered. The loft was cold. The heating hadn't kicked in fully yet, and the concrete was sapping the warmth from the air. She hugged her arms, rubbing her shoulders. I stood up. I took off my heavy canvas jacket. It was warm from my body, smelling of rain and engine oil and sawdust. I held it out to her. Here, I said. You'll be cold, she said. I run hot, I lead. She took the jacket. She put it on. It engulfed her, the sleeves hanging past her hands, the shoulders drooping. She pulled it tight, burying her nose in the collar. She closed her eyes. It smells like work, she said, and rain. Sorry, I said. I didn't have time to do laundry. Don't be. She opened her eyes. There was a pause where words would have done damage. I stepped back, creating a deliberate distance between us. Do you have the lock code? I asked. She blinked, the spell breaking, but settling into something warmer, more solid. Yes. I changed it this morning. Good, I said. You need to lock up. And you need to sleep. Kaizen, she said. Yeah? I have a project starting next month, she said. A retrofit of an old warehouse in Ballard. It involves moving some massive structural beams. I need a rigging consultant. Someone who understands. Structure. Someone I can trust not to drop the load. I'm expensive, I said. Consulting rates are higher than night calls. I know, she smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen. I can afford you. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen rapidly. I'm emailing you the retainer agreement now. I'm copying my lawyer and my accountant. It's official. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I'll be there, I said. I walked to the freight elevator. I hit the button. The grate rattled open. Thank you, she called out. She was standing in the middle of the empty room, wearing my jacket, clutching the pizza box lid with the diagram on it like it was a blueprint for a new life. I nodded. I didn't say, "You're welcome." That felt too small. I just pulled the grate down. As the elevator descended, I leaned my head back against the metal cage. When I climbed into the cab of my truck, my shoulders dropped for the first time all night, and the steering wheel didn't feel like a weight in my hands anymore. I walked to my truck in the rain. I sat in the cab for a moment, looking up at the fourth-floor window. A light went on. Then another. She was setting up. She was starting over. I put the truck in gear and drove home. The check in my pocket burned against my chest, not because of the money, but because of the name signed on the line. Logan King. A name I knew I'd be seeing again. The end. Closing thoughts. The core lesson? I learned that dignity weighs more than any piano, and the heaviest things we carry aren't made of wood or stone. They're the secrets we keep to protect people who don't deserve it. Letting go is the strongest move you can make. The invoice is paid, the inventory is notarized, and Monday morning at 9 a.m., we start building something new. Engagement. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.